Discover how a hidden scar can alter a royal destiny. The marble floor beneath Luca's feet gleamed cold and unforgiving under towering chandeliers that spilled pools of golden light across the vast banquet hall. The air hung thick with the mingled scents of roasted meats, spiced wine, and powdered perfume, blending seamlessly with the whispered intrigues and haughty laughter of nobles gathered in intricate fashions. The riot of deep velvets, silks, and gilded embroidery was a sharp contrast to Luca's humble servant's attire, a plain, threadbare apron stretched over clothing that had seen better days. His hands trembled slightly as he maneuvered between tables laden with gleaming silverware and delicate porcelain, balancing a silver tray heavy with crystal flutes of ruby wine. Each step was cautious, the polished floors slick beneath his worn leather shoes. The murmurs of the courtiers swelled into a low tide of snickers and pointed whispers as he passed. "Watch where you spill, boy," snapped a woman adorned in jeweled finery, her sharp eyes narrowing like daggers. A coarse voice barked from behind a nearby cluster of assembled nobles, "Serve quicker, will you? This is no place for fumbling." Luca's jaw clenched, but he swallowed his pride, forcing a stiff nod as he steadied the tray. The laughter grew louder as he tripped barely perceptible over the hem of his apron, sending a single flute teetering before steadying it with shaking fingers. The collective breath of the room seemed to catch. He caught a fragment of a phrase, laced with contempt, a servant, indeed, but clumsy as any commoner. His piercing blue eyes darted to the far end of the hall, where Duchess Alara sat amidst a circle of influential elites, the cracked royal seal of the House of Arlen emblazoned upon her velvet gown's cuff glinting with cruel distinction. Her gaze cut like a blade, resting on him with calculating coolness before flicking away dismissively. Luca forced himself to meet her eyes, catching not pity but a cold recognition, a silent warning masked beneath regal poise. The banquet table stretched long and imposing, a vivid symbol of courtly opulence and treacherous politics. Its polished mahogany marred only by the tiny cracks in its lacquer, whispering secrets of fractured loyalties and unspoken battles beneath its surface. As he continued serving, one hand stiff, the other steady from years of masked resilience, a cruel voice echoed in his mind, mirroring the venom in the air, "You will never sit at this table as more than a shadow." The banquet's clamor faded into a dull roar as Luca's perspective narrowed, each insult and sneer a hammer striking the fragile iron of his hopeful heart. The burn of shame spread, yet beneath it smoldered the flicker of something forbidden. His lineage, hidden and denied, the faint pulse of a rightful claim kept silent. A folded note slipped discreetly onto the tray where he stood, its edges worn but the ink still bold. His fingers closed around it, pulse quickening, the cracked royal seal mirroring the fracture within him. The room's glitter and gaiety blurred, deep shadows creeping into the corners of his vision. Luca's gaze lingered on the note, the air heavy with the unspoken story waiting to be told, a destiny fought for in silence. He lowered his eyes as the procession moved on, the Duchess's piercing glance lingering, a silent challenge etched in the flicker of candlelight. The moment held a breath suspended between ruin and revelation before fading into the relentless tide of the court's indifferent grandeur. The echoes of derision lingered in Luca's ears like a persistent storm as he retreated from the glowing opulence of the banquet hall into the shadowed confines of the servants' corridor. The thick velvet curtains muffled the polished murmurs of nobles, yet the weight of scorn pressed heavily against his chest. His breath fogged the chill air, mingling with the faint scent of wax and wood polish that permeated the corridor. His hands balled into fists at his sides, the polished silver tray feeling suddenly foreign and burdensome. Every step he took was a battle to contain the tempest of shame and fury roiling beneath his calm exterior. The ornate walls, adorned with gilded molding and portraits of regal ancestors, whispered of a lineage from which he was cruelly excluded. Luca's piercing blue eyes, clouded with unshed emotion, drifted to the cracked royal seal pressed into the hem of a nearby tapestry, a fractured emblem resembling his own fractured identity. The symbol, once a mark of honor, now felt like a mockery of his hidden truth. In the solitude of the dim corridor, his mind sailed back to the memory of his mother, her warm hands pressed against his forehead as she whispered assurances amid danger. The sacrifice she made to mask his lineage, burying him beneath layers of falsehood to protect him from a world eager to devour the vulnerable. A slow, bitter rage surfaced, tangled with deep sorrow. How long must he hide? How many silent nights must he endure, bearing the sting of rejection like an invisible wound? His mother's sacrifices clung to him, a haunting legacy of love braided with pain. Luca's gaze fell to his hands, where faint scars marred his skin's silent testament to battles both bodily and spiritual. The scars burned with memories of harsh lessons learned in shadow and flame. He pressed his back against the cold stone, the chill seeping deep, grounding him in his inner turmoil. The corridor was a narrow world of whispers and shadows, a stark contrast to the glittering stage from which he had been dismissed. His heartbeat slowed as he closed his eyes, summoning the resolve his mother had instilled. A flicker of something fierce began to ignite a fragile ember of hope amid the smoldering ashes of doubt. The distant clatter of silver utensils echoed faintly, mingling with the soft murmur of courtly intrigue, a reminder that his story was far from over, that beneath the veneer of servitude lay a destiny yet to be claimed. As Luca opened his eyes, the tapestry's fractured royal seal caught the dim lantern light, casting shimmering splinters across the stone floor. The fractured seal was not just a mark of broken lineage, it was a silent challenge. Resolute, Luca straightened his shoulders. The shadows around him deepened, folding silently, but within his gaze blazed an unyielding promise. The path would be treacherous, the opposition fierce, but his heart beat with the unshakable rhythm of a rightful king hidden in plain sight. In that cold, narrow hallway, a quiet transformation took root, the first ripple of rebellion in a sea of courtly deception. A breath held in suspense against the relentless tension of a world waiting to either break or embrace him. The dim glow of twilight seeped through the heavy stone windows of the servants' quarters, where Luca found himself alone amidst the quiet dust and worn textures of a world kept at the margins. The echoes of the banquet, the sneers, the disdainful glances receded into a shadowed silence that clung around his shoulders like a second skin. His dark hair, damp with the nervous sweat of restraint, clung to his forehead as he knelt beside a forgotten chest, the flickering candlelight casting trembling halos around the carved royal seal emblazoned on its lid. The seal, scarred and cracked, was a fragment of the fractured lineage he bore silently. Hands shaking, Luca lifted the chest's lid, the ancient hinges releasing a faint creak that stirred the stillness. Inside lay folded cloth, letters tied with delicate ribbons, and a small, crumpled bundle of parchment, the weight of history pressed thin and fragile beneath his fingertips. With care, he unfolded an aged letter, its ink faded but the script elegant and indelible, the words penned by his late mother with trembling tenderness. "My beloved son," it began, the voice resonating across time, filled with sacrifice and unspoken hope. She spoke of blood hidden to protect him, of duty demanded of those unseen by the court's piercing eyes, of love cloaked in the shadows, waiting for its moment to bloom. Luca's breath hitched. The letter was more than paper. It was a lifeline cast across the chasms of deceit and exile. Each line whispered truths long withheld, a map to identity buried beneath layers of servitude and silence. His piercing blue eyes shimmered with unshed tears, the heavy shame that had weighed upon him shifting, folding into something new, a fragile ember of courage. The cracked royal seal on the letter mirrored the one on the chest, as if fate itself had fractured his path yet left a shard of light, waiting to be ignited. Beyond the window, the distant sounds of the court lingered, a fading murmur of gaiety and power games, unaware of the quiet revolution kindling within the lowly servant's chamber. Luca rose slowly, the letter clutched to his chest, the first tentative beat of a heart claiming its rightful rhythm. The opulence and terror of the palace were daunting, but behind the veil of his humble guise, a new resolve crystallized, a promise not just to himself, but to the legacy threaded through noble blood and secret love. The shadows cast by the flickering candle stretched long, painting the walls with warnings and possibilities. A sudden knock at the door interrupted the moment, firm, deliberate, layered with unspoken urgency. Luca's eyes met the dim hallway beyond, the silken threads of his fate pulling taut on the cusp of revelation. The flame of the candle wavered, then steadied, a beacon in the dark. And beneath its gentle light, the once hidden heir inhaled deeply, stepping into the uncharted dawn of his destined battle. Beneath the churning sky, the gardens of the palace stretched like a secret world hidden from the gilded confines of the royal halls. Mist clung to the dew-slicked roses, their delicate petals trembling under the weight of early morning, fragile yet unyielding amid the creeping chill. Luca's breath formed fleeting clouds in the crisp air, his silhouette moving with a cautious confidence that belied the unrest knotting within his chest. After the harsh humiliation of the banquet, every whispered insult still echoed faintly in his mind like ghosts refusing to rest. Yet, beneath the bruising shame, a flicker of something new glimmered, a quiet defiance, a tentative surge of hope that wove itself into the frost along the cobblestones. He paused beside a cracked marble bench beneath a twisted old oak, the bark rough and scarred from decades of storms. Luca's fingers brushed against the surface, tracing the deep fissures like the hidden scars beneath his skin, marks of a life shaped by secrecy and sacrifice. The letter from his mother still burned softly in his pocket, a sacred relic whispering promises of a lineage waiting to be reclaimed. The distant clang of armor and muted footsteps caught his attention. Emerging from the shadows was a courtier, his gait measured but his eyes bright with a rare kindness. The man approached slowly, bowing with a subtle grace that spoke not just of duty but of sympathy. "Your Highness," the courtier whispered, voice low yet steady, "there are those within the court who see your truth. You need not walk this path alone." Luca met his gaze, a surge of gratitude and wariness flickering across his piercing blue eyes. The offer was laced with peril, yet the possibility of an ally breathed fresh air into the suffocating chamber of his doubts. Together, they retreated from the prying eyes of the palace, slipping beneath heavy drapes and into the muted labyrinth of the royal gardens. The scent of jasmine and wet earth mingled with distant voices, the court's endless game unfolding in conversations steeped with intrigue and betrayal. In this hidden sanctuary, plans began to take shape, quiet strategies whispered beneath the rustle of leaves, alliances woven in shadows, and the fragile tendrils of hope reaching tentatively toward light. Yet, the path was steep and jagged. Luca's strides faltered under the weight of secrets, each step a test of courage against the suffocating fear that the Duchess's gaze, cold and calculating, lingered still within every corridor. Questions gnawed at him. How many could he trust? Was the court a nest of vipers ready to strike? And amidst the looming specter of duty and legacy, where did his heart truly belong? The palace bells tolled, a sonorous reminder of the relentless march of time and the inescapable tides of destiny. Luca's ally pressed a hand briefly upon his shoulder, solid and reassuring, a silent vow. As shadows lengthened and the first stars pierced the velvet sky, Luca's breath steadied beneath the flickering lanterns. The battle for identity and acceptance was far from over, but the first embers of rebellion had sparked, glowing faint yet fierce within the depths of his soul. And somewhere, hidden beneath the opulence and shadows, the fractured royal seal remained, a beacon broken yet unbroken, mirroring the unyielding quest of the heir cloaked in the garb of a servant. A whisper of wind stirred the garden's roses, their petals shimmering like jewels beneath silvered moonlight, carrying with them the promise of a dawn that might yet break through the darkness. The dusk settled dimly over the royal gardens, where the scent of roses mingled faintly with the chill of an impending storm. Luca's footsteps echoed softly against the gravel path, his coat fluttering uneasily in the sudden gusts that swept through the trimmed hedges and over statues carved in marble white and mossy green. Around him, the once comforting shadows now seemed stretched and jagged, twisting with the weight of whispered rumors and tightening suspicion. He held his mother's letter close beneath his coat, the fragile parchment a frail shield against the biting cold and the sharper dangers closing in. The courtier who had been his tentative ally had vanished into the labyrinth of corridors and half-truths, his promises faint and fleeting like wraiths. Luca's trust, once seated in the hope of companionship, now wilted beneath a cynical rain of betrayal. In the grand halls illuminated by flickering candlelight and gold leaf, voices muttered behind fluted hands, glances cast with veiled menace. The cracks in the royal seal seemed to widen, casting fractured patterns upon the polished floors where conspiracies crawled. Rumors seeded like poisoned thorns bore fruit, sour and bitter on tongues eager to dissect the shadows. Luca's gaze fell on the banquet table, once more a sprawling monument of opulence and duplicity, its gleaming surface both a promise of grandeur and a precarious stage. It was the same place he had served as a lowly servant, but now it had become a battleground where every whispered secret struck like a dagger. His breath rose and fell in measured, shallow waves, the weight of expectation and danger pressing down with relentless force. Each interaction was a cautious dance, every word a gambit cloaked in silken tones and shimmering politeness. One evening, beneath the flicker of stained glass windows etched with heraldic symbols, a noble ally stepped from the shadows, a woman whose eyes betrayed both compassion and cunning. Their whispered exchanges were brief but potent, an exchange of trust and strategy spun from desperation. "You must tread carefully, Luca," she warned in a voice just above a breath. "The dukedom watches, and not all who smile are friends. Your cause stirs unrest, and in this court, unrest is met with blades, not words." Her caution pierced through the burgeoning resolve swelling in him. The path forward was as narrow and perilous as the castle's winding staircases, fraught with unseen traps and whispered vendettas. Luca's nights became a tempest of restless plans and quiet resolve, the flickering flame of hope battling the cold ash of doubt. He withdrew often to the solitude of his chambers, poring over the letter, each line a beacon in the murk, each word a clarion call to a destiny deferred but not denied. Yet the court's shadow grew longer. One evening, a hand slipped a folded note beneath his chamber door, etched with the cruel clarity of a threat wrapped in silk. "Beware the friend who shares your path." The message was a knife coated in velvet, the implications chilling his blood. Luca's fingers curled tightly around the paper, his mind racing with tangled fears. Whispers of a conspiracy, of whispered alliances and betrayal twirl like storm clouds above the palace turrets. In that charged silence, the fractured royal seal seemed to burn in his palm, a silent reminder of the fractured line he was bound to restore. The struggle had begun in earnest, the layered shadows of power compact and suffocating, but beneath them, Luca's heart hardened into a blade, tempered by the fires of betrayal yet gleaming with unyielding purpose. The city's night deepened outside his window as the candle flickered low, a delicate sentinel against the coming darkness. And with the moon's cold gaze casting long shadows across the stone battlements, Luca faced the slow unraveling of trust, the cruel, intricate dance of power, love, and survival that would test every part of him until his truth could no longer be silenced. The great hall hummed with a sinister energy as the gathering commenced, chandeliers casting fractured shadows over faces both mask and mirror. Luca stood at the edge of the banquet, his form a study in composed tension, dark hair loosely framing the sharp lines of his face, piercing blue eyes betraying the storm within. The cracked royal seal, worn on a discreet pendant beneath his shirt, seemed to pulse with a heartbeat all its own, an emblem of fractured lineage and ancestral sacrifice. The murmurs swirling through the crowd had escalated from whispers to overt speculation. Rumors of a hidden heir lingered like a noxious perfume, spreading with calculated whispers and dangerous smiles. Every glance that brushed Luca carried the weight of judgment, suspicion, and unspoken allegiance. He was both the hunted and the hope, a symbol of fractured legacy and impending reckoning. A hush fell as Duchess Alara ascended to the dais, her figure regal and unyielding, eyes sharp as a hawk surveying the unfolding scene. Her voice, cold and trenchant, sliced through the murmurs with the precision of a blade. "Lords and ladies," she began, her gaze fixing on Luca with unrelenting intensity, "we have long endured shadows lurking within our bloodline, fractures that threaten the integrity of our throne." The crowd's tension tightened like a drawn bowstring, the clash of power and secrecy imminent. "This night," she continued, "we reveal the truth that some wished buried. The servant who dares to walk among us is no mere commoner. He is the hidden heir Luca of House Arlen." A collective gasp rippled through the assembly, trembling like the fragile flicker of candlelight battling encroaching darkness. Luca's heart thundered beneath his chest, the silence that followed a crashing wave of betrayal and revelation. Eyes once veiled in polite curiosity now blazed with accusation, fear mingled with astonishment. Allies turned cold, and foes leered, their smiles sharpened with triumph. Luca's mind raced, the weight of the moment crushing yet clarifying. The court, the fractured bloodline, the hidden scarsel converged into a singular moment of painful clarity. Alara's betrayal was not merely political but personal, a strategic unmasking meant to shatter him utterly. As the Duchess's cold stare bore into him, Luca felt the sting of isolation, his allies unsure, his future precarious as the banquet table that symbolized both sanctuary and betrayal. The royal seal pressed heavy against his chest, a fractured testament to his quest for identity and belonging. But beneath the weight of betrayal, a fierce resolve ignited. The path ahead was no longer shrouded in shadows. It was illuminated by the raw truth laid bare, a call to rise, to reclaim, to redefine. His voice, steady yet charged with unyielding purpose, broke the hush. "Truth may be hidden, but it cannot be erased. My mother's sacrifice was never in vain. I stand not as a shadow but as a claimant to a legacy denied." The room trembled with the magnitude of his revelation, the banquet table no longer merely a stage of power but a battlefield where fate's tides shifted irrevocably. Luca's gaze lifted to the ornate ceiling, where frescoes depicted heroines and kings locked in eternal struggle, a reflection of his own journey unfolding anew. As the murmurs swelled into a tumultuous roar, Luca stood resolute, his identity no longer concealed but defiantly proclaimed. The fractured royal seal, battered yet unbroken, gleamed faintly beneath the cavernous light, a beacon for the battles yet to come. The moment closed like the heavy drape of twilight, pregnant with the promise of a dawn steeped in reckoning and redemption. Beneath the heavy stone arch of the prison's vaulted ceiling, Luca sat on a narrow cot, the thin blanket scarcely shielding him from the chill that seeped through the ancient walls. The faint glow of a single candle flickered against the cold, damp stones, casting long, grotesque shadows that clung to the corners like specters of his fractured hopes. Outside, the storm unleashed its fury upon the kingdom, rain hammering the palace roofs in relentless torrents. The sound echoed through the corridors, a wild, unforgiving rhythm that matched the tumult inside Luca's chest. The once vibrant pulses of hope, love, and promise now thudded slow and heavy, a dying drum beneath layers of betrayal and isolation. Luca's hands, once so steady and sure in the ballroom's glittering light, now trembled as they traced faint scars on his forearms, reminders of battles both physical and unseen. His piercing blue eyes, dulled by endless nights of confinement and despair, traced the cracked royal seal burned indelibly into his memory, a symbol not just of fractured lineage but of the ruin slowly consuming him. His thoughts drifted to the banquet table, once a stage of opportunity and concealed treacheries. The gleaming woods and polished silverware that had dazzled so many now seemed cold, unforgiving, their beauty masking the poisonous games that had undone him. A gust of wind whispered through a chink in the stonework, sending a shiver rolling through the cell. Luca pulled the thin blanket closer, but it was the chill in his soul that weighed heaviest, an ache sharpened by the absence of allies and the silence from those he had trusted. There were no voices now, no clatter of footsteps or courtly music, only the relentless tick of time slipping through his fingers like smoke. The light of day was but a distant memory, swallowed by the creeping dusk that encased him. The faces of those who had betrayed him fluttered in his mind's eye, a trusted courtier's smile twisted in deceit, Duchess Alara's icy glare dripping with calculated malice. They had built walls that crushed hope, binding him not just in chains of iron but in the suffocating grip of shattered loyalty. He reached slowly into his coat, fingers finding the folded letter from his mother, the paper soft with age and trembling importance. The faded ink was like a lifeline cast across the abyss, yet now it felt distant, a fragile thread fraying under the weight of despair. A single tear traced the curve of his cheek, not audible in the thick silence. Luca's lips parted, whispering into the void, "Is this all that remains?" But the cavernous cell returned no answer. Outside, thunder rumbled, a mournful dirge swallowed by the impenetrable darkness. Luca's heart, once filled with the light of secret dreams and forbidden love, now flickered weakly on the verge of extinguishment. His shoulders sagged as the candle guttered, the flame wrestling against the chill. The fractured seal, the banquet's brilliance, the whispered conspiracies, they all collapsed inward, leaving a hollow shell where hope had once flickered. Alone beneath the weight of stone and silence, Luca descended deeper into the shadows of his own making, a fragile spirit breaking beneath the relentless storm that raged both outside the walls and within his soul. The cold seeped into every corner of the stone cell, a brutal whisper caressing Luca's skin and sinking deep into his bones. The single-barred window, high above, allowed a slice of pale moonlight to drape across the floor, but it failed to illuminate the heavy darkness settling in his heart. The prison was a cavernous tomb, echoing with the distant drip of water and the occasional clink of Kisa, relentless countdown to nothingness. Luca's frame was slumped against the cold, damp wall, his dark hair tangled and matted, framing eyes once fierce with purpose now dulled to pools of resigned sorrow. His exquisite, though scuffed, suit lay crumpled around him, betraying no hint of noble bearing beneath the shroud of prison garb. The weight of his hidden scars, both physical and invisible, pressed on his soul, a relentless reminder of battles lost and the fragile threads tethering him to hope. The cracked royal seal, once proud and shining, now seemed etched in shadow and dust within his Minda, silent judge condemning the fractured lineage and the vanished promises it carried. His fingers, curled and pale, brushed over a faded piece of parchment, the letter from his late mother still clutched close as a faint flicker of a fading legacy. Outside, the storm raged on. Thunder growled like a beast in its lair, distant yet threatening, while the skeletal branches of trees scraped at the cold glass like claws against the night. The relentless rain lashed the courtyard, a cold, tortuous symphony mirroring the desolation inside. Luca's breath came steady but with the weight of defeat. Words failed him. Silence had become his language. The room itself seemed to shrink, pressing tight against his chest, suffocating and absolute. His mind drifted through fractured memories, the banquet table gleaming in distant light, the Duchess's steely gaze, the whispered betrayals that had shattered his fragile ascendancy. His identity, once a spark of hope, now flickered faintly, threatened by the relentless darkness of isolation. A faint, almost inaudible sound stirred, a distant echo of laughter mingled grotesquely with the harsh clatter of chains. Luca's eyelids fluttered, the fragile connection to the outside world wavering like a candle struggling against a suffocating draft. His gaze fell on the cracked stone floor where a single rose petal, impossibly vibrant against the dull gray, lay flattened and bruised, a potent symbol of beauty crushed beneath the cruel hands of fate. Time stretched infinitely, each moment a slow droplet falling into a bottomless void. The anguish was tangible, a living thing breathing cold fire into his veins. Luca's lips parted in a whisper devoid of hope. Is this my end? The question dissolved into the encompassing silence, swallowed by the unyielding shadow. His body slumped further into itself, the once noble Heir diminishing into a solitary silhouette against the indifferent stone. And in the suffocating quiet, the candle finally guttered out, plunging Luca's world into a darkness so complete, so absolute, that even the faintest flicker of hope seemed beyond reach. The prison cell lay shrouded in oppressive silence, the oppressive dark pressing in from every corner. Luca sat slumped against the cold stone wall, the faint moonlight filtering weakly through the barred window, casting fractured shadows upon his weary face. The cracked royal seal he had worn like a secret talisman now imprinted itself upon his heavy heart, as fractured and bruised as his own spirit. His fingers traced absently over a faded parchment clutched tight in his palm, the letter from his late mother. The edges were worn and delicate, the ink faded, yet every word spoken directly to his soul. It spoke of sacrifice, of hiding in plain sight, and above all, a love that demanded he survive. Outside, the first stirrings of dawn brushed the horizon, painting the cold walls in a ghostly silver. The stillness in the cell was punctuated by a distant faint sound, the soft rustling of a cloak, the hushed footsteps of a visitor. Luca's heart fluttered, a fragile ember rekindled in the shadows. Through the narrow slit in the door slid a small wooden key and a folded note. His breath caught as his fingers unfurled the delicate paper, the handwriting unmistakable. The words glowed faintly in the dim light. Hope is the strength hidden in the cracks. You are not alone. A single tear traced down Luca's cheek, glimmering in the pale light. He pressed the key to his chest, a cold, small gesture that transformed into a beacon of warmth. The fractured seal, the banquet table's betrayal, the scars, they all seemed to align in this slender thread of possibility. Memories flooded his mother's whispered lessons of resilience, the soft touch of dawn after night's darkest hour, the quiet glance from Duchess Alara that had promised both threat and truth. Luca's breath steadied, the storm within him quelled by this fragile lifeline. The shadows around the cell softened, shadows giving way to the faintest flicker of light. He rose slowly, every movement a testament to a will reborn. In the depths of his solitude, the path forward was hazy but undeniable, marked by courage born of suffering and the quiet fire of legacy reclaimed. The candle flickered once more, steady and strong, a fragile heartbeat resonating in the cavernous silence. And as the first true light of morning peeked over the distant palace towers, Luca breathed in the promise of renewal, not as a king yet, but as a soul steadfast in the will to rise. The prison walls, harsh and unyielding, softened as dawn's light crept stealthily through the narrow window, brushing the cold stones with a tender glow. Luca stirred on his rough cot, the subtle warmth awakening memories long buried beneath despair. Outside, the gardens bloomed quietly, their roses kissed by the early sun, fragile and resilient just like the Heir who sat in shadow. For days, the silence had been unrelenting, each moment thick with isolation, each breath a battle beneath the weight of shattered dreams. Yet now, as the golden fingers of morning teased the edges of his cell, something unspoken stirred within him, a breath drawn bravely after a long, suffocating night. His dark hair fell messily over piercing blue eyes that flickered with fragile life. The worn fabric of his modest clothing clung damply, but beneath the surface lay the unmistakable grace of noble blood fighting quietly to reclaim its place. Luca's hands, resting on his lap, trembled slightly as he drew from his pocket the crumpled letter from his late Mothera fragile talisman amidst the wreckage. The faded ink spoke now not just of sacrifice and concealment, but of hope and undying love. He traced the cracked royal seal emblazoned on the paper, its fractured lines mirroring the fractures within his own soul. Yet rather than despair, a slow warmth spread, soft and tenacious, like the first buds stubbornly unfurling amid winter's retreat. The heavy silence of the cell was broken by the distant song of a sparrow, delicate and pure, singing of endurance and the promise of dawn. Luca's gaze lifted toward the small window, where slender rays painted golden patterns across the stone floor, a dance of light in the depths of darkness. The castle beyond was waking, its towering spires catching the sun's embrace, its gardens unfolding like carefully guarded secret whispers. The banquet table, both altar and battlefield of his fate, waited out of sight but no longer out of reach. A quiet resolve settled over him, tender yet unwavering. "This is but the first light," he murmured, voice hushed but resolute. A beginning cloaked in fragility, but a beginning nonetheless. The fractured seal glimmered faintly, a symbol not just of broken lineage but of a legacy waiting to rise resilient and unyielding as the roses that bloomed outside his prison walls. Luca rose slowly, the flickering candle casting soft shadows that seemed to bend toward him, as if even the darkness yearned for his light. With each measured breath, he rekindled the embers of hope hidden in his heart, understanding that transformation began in the smallest of moments. A letter found, a dawn breaking, a promise whispered to the silence. The path ahead remained veiled in uncertainty and shadow, yet the first steps were takenfragile, profound, and imbued with the strength of love transcending the weight of all that sought to bind him. And as the light expanded, so too did Luca's spirit, swelling quietly with the promise that even in the deepest night, the dawn always awaited. The citadel's great hall was alive with the muted murmur of nobles and courtiers, their voices a tangled web threaded with suspicion, allegiance, and fragile hope. Velvet drapes hung heavy over stained glass windows that filtered the waning daylight into jeweled hues, casting fractured rainbows across the polished marble floor, a visual symphony of light battling encroaching shadows. Luca moved among the murmurs like a reborn spirit, his dark hair falling back from his forehead, eyes sharp and steady, reflecting a newfound certainty that had been forged in the crucible of betrayal and despair. His suit, perfectly tailored though modest, seemed to carry the weight of the fractured royal seal hidden beneath a burning symbol of lineage and destiny. Near the long banquet table, polished oak gleaming ominously beneath silver candelabras, Luca's presence drew wary eyes. The table was a battlefield, now a gathering ground for power and deception, and he stood as both claimant and insurgent. Through the crowd's gathering storm-stepped Duchess Alara, regal and resolute, her emerald gown swirling like dark seaweed as she approached Luca with a chilling grace. Her eyes, sharp and unyielding, locked onto his with the cold fire of a monarch defending her throne. The hall stilled into tense anticipation, the dance of power about to unfold beneath the chandelier's fractured light. In the face of icy stares and whispered accusations, Luca's voice rang clear, compelling, breaking the brittle silence. "I stand here not to claim merely a crown, but to restore what was fractured, to heal the fractures of our lineage with truth and justice." His words, laced with unguarded passion, rippled through the crowd. The courtier he had long trusted, now revealed as a traitor by Alara's cunning manipulation, melted from view, leaving Luca isolated yet undeterred. A hush descended, a pregnant pause as eyes flickered between fear, admiration, and ruthless calculation. Then, bold and unflinching, Luca stepped forward, revealing the crumpled letter from his mother, her script a sacred bond that defied shadows of doubt. "This is my truth," he declared, holding the letter aloft, "and with it, my promise to this kingdom." The fractured royal seal gleamed in the candlelight, the same symbol that bound him to a legacy stolen yet unconquered. Around the room, whispers blossomed into cautious murmurs, the tide of power subtly shifted. Yet beneath the veneer of grace and grandeur, the cost was clear: the betrayal of trust, the fragility of alliances, the looming danger that any step forward could unleash. Luca felt the weight of every gaze, every whispered doubt, yet his resolve blazed stronger. Behind him, the flickering candelabra cast long shadows, a stark reminder that even in triumph, darkness lingered. With a breath steady and fierce, Luca met Duchess Alara's gaze, not with hatred, but with the unshakable dignity of a rightful heir who had chosen to rise, not fall. "The crown is not just blood," he said softly, the words carrying like a benediction across the hall. "It is the courage to stand, to forgive, and to lead beyond the shadows." A single rose petal floated down from above, a silent symbol of beauty and resilience amidst the thorns, a fragile but powerful emblem of the battle not yet won but profoundly begun. As the light from the chandeliers shimmered and settled, Luca felt the stirrings of redemption weaving through the court's opulent despair. In that charged moment, he understood. The path to the throne would demand every ounce of his strength and heart, but he was no longer a hidden shadow. He was the pulse, the promise, the fractured seal reforged in fire and hope. The great hall seemed to hold its breath, capturing the fragile dawn of a kingdom's new beginning as Luca stood poised, unbowed and ready for the trials yet to come. The grand hall trembled with a heavy silence, the thick velvet curtains drawn back to reveal a sea of expectant faces clustered beneath towering chandeliers that cast a constellation of flickering lights and shadows. Luca stood at the center, his silhouette framed by the newly restored throne, the cracked royal seal emblazoned boldly upon the velvet tapestry behind him, no longer fractured, but reforged, radiant with promise. His dark, shoulder-length hair caught the shimmering candlelight, and his piercing blue eyes, once clouded with doubt, now burned with unwavering conviction. The once hesitant heir had transformed every scar etched beneath his skin, a testament to battles fought both within and without, each a silent hymn to resilience and emerging strength. The banquet table stretched before him, gleaming and immaculate, no longer a symbol of subtle treachery but a stage for justice and reclaimed legacy. The gathered nobility whispered, their murmurs a fragile web of apprehension and awe. Luca's voice, when it came, was steady and clear, commanding the room with a combination of regal authority and heartfelt earnestness. "My lords and ladies, you have witnessed the fractures of our kingdom, bonds broken, trust betrayed. Yet, it is through love and courage that we shall mend these wounds, transcend the darkness that has clouded our path." A gentle light played upon the cracks of the royal seal at his side, reflecting the mended lineage flowing through his veins, a lineage not marked solely by birth but by the strength to rise, forgive, and lead. He turned his gaze upon Duchess Alara, her regal posture unyielding but now shadowed with the weight of defeat. "Your quest for power has revealed truth I no longer fear," Luca said, his tone neither harsh nor vengeful, but resolute. "The kingdom I claim is built not on fear, but on justice, unity, and a love that acknowledges every voice, every heart." The Duchess's eyes narrowed, the silence thickening like a storm about to break, before she inclined her head, a subtle yet profound yield to the inevitability scripted by destiny and courage. Behind Luca, the tapestry fluttered softly as a breeze carried the faint scent of roses, the emblem of fragile beauty thriving amidst the thorns, a symbol woven through his journey from hidden heir to sovereign. Standing still, Luca felt the powerful quietude of transformation settle within him, a mantle heavier than any crown yet borne with unwavering grace. The court, once an arena of whispered threats and shadowed betrayals, now bore witness to a dawn untainted by past fears. A subtle smile graced Luca's lips as he breathed deeply, the weight of solitude lifted by the collective strength of a renewed kingdom. His heart beat with the promise of days unmarked by secrecy or solitude. The chandeliers gleamed brighter, the golden hues flooding the room like the first light of promise after an endless twilight. And in that moment, poised between past and future, Luca stood a king not only by blood but by the courage of spirit, ready to embrace the legacy that awaited in the soft, radiant glow of a new dawn. The first light of dawn crept softly through the expansive windows of the palace, casting a golden hue across the lush gardens and ornate marble halls. Luca stood at the balcony overlooking the kingdom he once thought lost, a landscape transformed, bathed in peace and renewal. His posture was relaxed, yet every muscle remembered the battles fought, the betrayals endured, and the love reclaimed. His piercing blue eyes traced the horizon where the sun, a gentle orb of promise, was beginning to rise. The fractured royal seal, now restored and shining faintly in the sunlight, symbolized more than lineage. It embodied resilience, the unbreakable bond between past sacrifices and future hope. Behind him, the grand chamber was quiet, the murmurs of last night's tumult fading into memories. The heavy velvet drapes fluttered softly in the morning breeze, whispering stories of wounds healed and secrets embraced. Luca's hand rested on the stone balustrade, fingers tracing the intricate carvings, symbols of loyalty and love that transcended the fragile veneer of duty. In the soft glow of dawn, the palace was alive with a gentle sense of awakening, a new chapter quietly unfolding amid the shadows of old wounds. Luca's thoughts drifted to his mother, her sacrifices buried beneath layers of secrecy, her love forging an unbreakable link between heroism and humility. He closed his eyes briefly, allowing the cool air to fill his lungs and settle deep within. The memories of betrayal, the pain of rejection, and the heartbreak of deception were now distant echoes, distant yet part of the fabric of his being. With each breath, he embraced the truth that love, true and enduring, had the power to rebuild what was broken. His hand steady now clenched into a gentle fist, a silent vow that he would carry their legacy forward not with regret but with hope and strength. The fractured seal, once a symbol of fractured bloodlines, shimmered in the sunlight as a testament to resilience, a beacon of hope for the kingdom and his heart. The lush gardens below bloomed anew, flowers opening their petals to the lighter reflection of Luca's own awakening. The silence was profound, filled with the promise of healing and the unspoken understanding that peace does not come from conquest but from acceptance. As the camera slowly pulled back, capturing the vastness of the kingdom bathed in dawn's tender glow, Luca's figure remained poised, a symbol of renewal, strength, and the unbreakable power of love that dares to cross borders, defy expectations, and forge destiny amid the quiet beauty of a rising sun. The dawn's gentle light spilled over the kingdom, casting a warm, tender glow that seemed to heal centuries of wounds etched into its stones. Luca stood on the palace balcony, overlooking fields and forests bathed in soft amber, the horizon a promise of serenity after storm and turmoil. His shoulders, once burdened by shadows of doubt, now eased into a posture of tranquil acceptance. The fractured crown he once believed necessary now rested gently in his hand, an emblem of the past, not his burden. His gaze lingered on the rising sun, the bright, relentless force of light symbolizing renewal, symbolizing forgiveness, not just of others but of himself. The kingdom below whispered in the wind. The symphony of life, of hope, and of love reborn echoed softly through the lush gardens. Every leaf seemed to shimmer with quiet strength. Every blossom bloomed as a testament to resilience. Luca closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the silent hum of renewal within him. Memories flickered, scars hidden beneath noble veneer, betrayals cloaked in courtiers' smiles, nights spent in despair and days awakening to silent promises. each fragment wove into a tapestry of profound understanding. Love's true power is its ability to transcend division, to forge unity from fractured pasts. He gently touched the cold surface of the royal seal on his staff, cracked before and now whole again, an unspoken symbol of healing. The symbols of the fractured lineage, the banquet table, the hidden scarsel transformed into symbols of hope, of a future built not on duty born of fear but on love nurtured in the light. Turning slowly, Luca lifted his gaze skyward, allowing the warmth of the sun's rays to envelop him, a luminous embrace that bathed his spirit in clarity. He understood, at last, that embracing his true self was the greatest gift he could offer to the kingdom, to his ancestors, and to the love that had endured beyond every obstacle. The palace gardens swayed in a gentle dance, a living testament to the peace that now rooted itself deep within the heart of the realm. Luca's steps moved deliberately, his expression serene, carrying the silent strength of a man who had journeyed through shadows and emerged into light. As the camera pulled back, capturing the vast expanse of the kingdom stirring in the dawn, a single poignant moment hung in the air, the image of Luca, a king not only by blood but by his unwavering, hopeful heart, gazing into the future with the quiet promise of love and peace, a dawn that would forever mark the beginning of a new era. The early dawn cast a soft, golden light across the palace courtyards, illuminating the intricate carvings on balustrades and the gentle ripple of the fountains. Luca stood alone on the balcony, the cool stone beneath his feet, a quiet witness to the awakening kingdom. His gaze was drawn to the horizon, where the first light brushed the clouds with hope, a delicate, almost sacred moment of peace. From this vantage, he reflected on the turbulent journey, the shadows of betrayal and the fractured royal seal that had once seemed irreparable. Now, it shimmered faintly, remolded, resilient symbol of a lineage reclaimed from the abyss, a testament to resilience and the unyielding power of love beyond bloodlines. The roses, once withered in treachery's cold grip, now bloomed vibrantly along the garden's winding paths, each petal a silent affirmation of beauty amid chaos. Their fragrance floated in the air, a reminder that amid the darkness, the faintest scent of hope endures. Luca's hand moved gently to the ornate railing, fingers caressing the cool metal, feeling the rhythm of renewal pulsate through him. The palace was alive with quiet harmony, every stone, every leaf whispering of healing and the dawn of a new era. Above, the sky blushed with the lingering tint of sunrise, a reflection of the peace he had fought so fiercely to claim. He closed his eyes for a moment, deeply, reverently listening to the wind, to the distant song of life awakening. The pain, the loss, the fears, those shadows had dissolved into the steady glow of acceptance. Love had triumphed over duty's heavy yoke, over class's relentless grip. Here, in this tranquil morning, he understood that true strength was forgiveness of others, of himself. As the light grew stronger, illuminating the path ahead, Luca stepped back from the balcony, a subtle, unbreakable resolve settling into his posture. The fractured seal, now whole again in spirit, shimmered softly beneath the rising sun, a symbol of peace, of hopes fulfilled, of love's eternal victory. The scene lingered, capturing the vast kingdom bathed in dawn's gentle brilliance, a visual symphony of renewal. A delicate silence enveloped the scene, a breath in the story's eternal song, acknowledging that peace is not the absence of conflict, but the harmony born from understanding and love. And as the camera slowly pulled away, the kingdom slept peacefully beneath a sky painted with the colors of hope, a testament to the quiet and spoken truth: the dawn always comes. Have you ever kept a secret that changed everything? Share your thoughts below.